Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. All right, hi guys. Continuing the Ukraine playlist from Kings and Generals. Original link to the video, top description, below that Discord. Click on it, send you right over there. If you are not ready to learn, there's the door. Home ec is down the hall. Or sit in the back and chill, that's fine. Phone's away. Hope you're all doing well. Let's get ready to learn. Again, I'd recommend watching the previous episodes, but we're a bit far in now. Episode 7. Kherson counteroffensive begins Russian invasion of Ukraine. Let's go. I said all the things, I think.
The sixth month of the Russian invasion of Ukraine largely continued with a stalemate. Since Russian invasion. The sixth month of the Russian invasion of Ukraine largely continued with a stalemate. Since Russia completed the capture of Luhansk Oblast in early July, not much has changed on the battlefield. Russia continued making small gains in the Donbass Front, while Ukraine achieved some success in the Kherson Front in late August, along with continuing its campaign of destruction of Russian military infrastructure in the rear, including in Crimea. The situation on the Zaporizhzhia and the Kharkiv fronts remained mostly stable. In this video, we're going to present a more detailed breakdown of the most important military and political events of the sixth.
You guys can hear me, right? Yeah, I'm good.
Month of detailed breakdown of the most important military and political events of the sixth month of the war between Russia and Ukraine. There's another front that each and every one of us needs to keep stable.
Guys, make sure to use the /Kings and Generals if this interests you. NordVPN helps them out. I feel privileged to watch this stuff. Least we can do.
And that's the front between you and those trying to steal from you over the internet. As you might know, you can get a hefty defender's advantage by deploying NordVPN from nordvpn.com/kingsandgenerals. It's a system that routes your activity through servers of your choice all over the world and encrypts everything, making it not only hard for hackers to steal valuable information like your banking details.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry. Wash my hands.
But more broadly for ISPs and data sellers to monitor your activity for profit. Preventing loss of critical information like credit card details is probably the most important thing, and you're most at risk when you're using public Wi-Fi. Therefore, if you're out and about, sealing up everything with NordVPN is vital. Or perhaps you're at home but you found something on the internet that's been region locked. Well, NordVPN lets you change your region to whatever you need, so the world's TV shows, games, and even prices on goods are at your disposal. Then consider the whole Nord package.
By the way,
with their
guys,
threat protection system that blocks malware at no extra cost for a limited time, NordPass for creating, managing, and applying the toughest passwords for everything, and NordLocker, cloud storage that protects your files with encryption. Take a look and get an exclusive deal with a 30-day money-back guarantee at nordvpn.com/kingsandgenerals. In the first days of August, Russia continued putting pressure on Ukraine's defenses, particularly in Donbass. Aiming to decrease the civilian casualties in the unoccupied portions of the Donetsk Oblast, the Ukrainian government started mandatory evacuation of all population there, as on August 2nd, the first train with people from Donetsk Oblast left for Kirovohrad Oblast. Russia's main target of the advance remained the Slovyansk-Seversk-Bakhmut Triangle, along with heavily fortified Avdiivka and areas surrounding it immediately to the north and to the south. Battles in these areas had been going on since July, and despite the concentration of the bulk of the Russian manpower and firepower in this area, not much had been achieved in the beginning of August. Russia's 4th Guards Tank Division, 90th Guards Tank Division, and the 3rd Motor Rifle Division engaged with the Ukrainian 79th Air Assault Brigade and the National Guard units around Dolina, Krasnopilya, and Bohorodichna to take full control over the MO3 highway and advance to Slovyansk. But since several Russian units had been redeployed from this axis to the Kherson front in order to confront the expected Ukrainian counter-offensive, the Russian army did not possess sufficient troops and firepower to overwhelm the Ukrainian defenders in this area. East of Seversk in early August, Ukraine largely stood their ground after the front line stabilized following the capture of Lysychansk.
Didn't this already get taken in the last video? Or maybe it was extended a bit, and then they took that, and I'm just imagining this.
Russia had made several attempts after the front line stabilized following the capture of Lysychansk. Russia had made several attempts to break through the Ukrainian defenses on the Hyhorivka, Verkhnokamianska, Ivanodarivka, Berestova line, with clashes reported on August 3rd, 7th, 8th and 11th without too much to show for it. Russia's biggest success in this area was reaching the western portion of Verkhnokamianska, where the elements of the 2nd Army Corps of the LPR pushed back the Kalinowski Regiment. But Ukraine's control over commanding heights between Ivanodarivka and Avdiivka in the south of the Axis had enabled the 4th Rapid Reaction Brigade and the 17th Tank Brigade to stand its ground against the 90th Guards Tank Division and the 55th Separate Motor Rifle Brigade, while near Hyhorivka, the 15th Mechanized Brigade had withstood the pressure of the 150th Motor Rifle Division and the GRU Spetsnaz. Russia continued its attempts to advance on Soledar and Bakhmut, along with capturing the T-1302 highway. In early August, their biggest success in this area was the capture of the Knauf plant in the eastern outskirts of Soledar on August 9th by the 6th Motor Rifle Regiment and the 150th Motor Rifle Division of LPR, with the support of Kadyrov's Chechen battalions against the 58th Motorized Brigade. To the south of Bakhmut, in the line from Kadema to Vyzhhorozdenia.
Let me just lower this a sec. Sorry about that. Let me go back like
Russia
10 seconds.
The support of Kadyrov's Chechen battalions against the 58th Motorized Brigade. To the south of Bakhmut, in the line from Kadema to Vyzhhorozdenia, Russia achieved some gains west of Parovska and Klenova, where clashes were reported between the 1st and 8th of August. In this area, the 72nd Mechanized Brigade remained under intense pressure from Wagner mercenaries, the separatist DPR's 5th Separate Motor Rifle Brigade, and the Diesel Battalion. Russia also intensified its attempts to break through the fortified area in the town of Avdiivka and its surroundings, and their attempts to bypass Avdiivka from the south and the north had some success. In the first days of August, the 1st Army Corps of DPR separatists pushed back the 56th Motorized Brigade between Spartak and Mineralna, while by August 4th, the 1st Army Corps of DPR captured at last part of Pisky in battles against the 54th Mechanized Brigade in the south of Avdiivka. The Ukrainian one.
Make sure to look, guys, if you didn't notice it already, the mini-map. It helps out so much for me. You see the square? It like shows you where in the thing, the line. Just, if you didn't know, it's a huge help.
154th Mechanized Brigade in the south of Avdiivka. The Ukrainian 110th Mechanized Brigade's defense of Krasnohorivka against the Somali Battalion of DPR and the 4th Motor Rifle Regiment of LPR and the Donbass Battalion's defense of Marinka against the 2nd Army Corps of LPR was more successful. Even though Russia continued holding initiative in Donbass, Ukraine also had some success. Battalion's defense of Marinka against the 2nd Army Corps of LPR was more successful. Even though Russia continued holding initiative in Donbass, Ukraine also had some success in the east in early August, as the 93rd Mechanized Brigade, the 95th Airborne Brigade, and the 10th Mountain Brigade liberated some land south of Izium, from Dmitrivka towards Devhenka, pushing back the 3rd Motor Rifle Division, the 13th Guards Tank Regiment, and the GRU Spetsnaz units in the process. It seems that Ukraine had taken advantage of redeployment of Russian units from this area to the Kherson and Zaporizhzhia fronts. On the Kharkiv front.
Question, guys.
The stalemate. The 13th from Dmitriv.
You see how the rivers right here? I guess you kind of have a bottleneck there, and I know there must be some bridge or something. But with Russian soldiers here. Excuse me, I had to burp. Sorry. What was I saying? Oh yeah. With the rivers here, bottleneck kind of there, and the only other kind of soldiers that could kind of go over here have to go over this bridge because they're right here. Isn't this just a perfect moment for just to try and like burst in at the sides of the rivers to encircle? Because even if they retreat, wouldn't they have to like go over little bridges and then they could get captured? Or am I underthinking it? Just a question.
Avdiivka towards Avdiivka, pushing back the 3rd Motor Rifle Division, the 13th Guards Tank Regiment, and the GRU Spetsnaz units in the process. It seems that Ukraine had taken advantage of redeployment of Russian units from this area to the Kherson and Zaporizhzhia fronts. On the Kharkiv front, the stalemate continued. Heavy battles took place around Udi, where the
I don't want to hear it. Shush.
units in the process. It seems that Ukraine had taken advantage of redeployment of Russian units from this area to the Kherson and Zaporizhzhia fronts. On the Kharkiv front, the stalemate continued. Heavy battles took place around Udi, where the 200th Separate Motor Rifle Brigade engaged with the 113th Territorial Defense Brigade in the Prudyanka-Dementivka-Slatina area, where the initial success of the 10th Motor Rifle Regiment of DPR on August 2nd in Dementivka was later negated by the pushback of the 28th Tank Battalion, and from Ternova to Bayrek, where the 80th Separate Motor Rifle Brigade's advance was repelled by the 117th and 227th Territorial Defense Brigades and the Ukrainian Special Forces. In early August, the slow and grinding pace of operations on both sides continued on the Kherson front. In this period, Russia tried to regain positions which they lost throughout the summer. While the 20th Separate Motor Rifle Brigade's attack on Avdiivka was repelled by the 60th Motorized Brigade, Russia managed to gain some ground on the Ukrainian bridgehead on the eastern bank of the river Inhulets in battles which intensified after August 5th. Held by the 60th Motorized Brigade, Russia managed to gain some ground on Avdiivka was repelled.
Yeah, I didn't hear it. I'm not. I didn't hear it. I didn't hear it. I'm rewinding.
Held by the 60th Motorized Brigade, Russia managed to gain some ground on the Ukrainian bridgehead on the eastern bank of the river Inhulets in battles which intensified after August 5th. There, the 34th Separate Motor Rifle Brigade and the 247th Guards Air Assault Regiment pushed the 105th and the 106th Mechanized Brigades and the Ukrainian Marine units slightly back, but failed to destroy the Inhulets bridgehead. On the Zaporizhzhia front, neither side achieved any meaningful progress either. The only notable event on the battlefield was a
question before I forget it. What if, so it's like, how does this war end? I don't really know. Okay, I don't know. But what if Russia was able to close this? Can you see where my pointer is? Yeah, you can. Close this gap right here. You see like all the red, Crimea, the red. Close this gap and cut off Ukraine from the Black Sea and therefore from the Mediterranean and therefore from Strait of Gibraltar and the Suez Canal and from world trade on the ocean. What if, wouldn't that be something to really fortify and keep Russia from doing and cutting? Because then Putin could almost kind of claim a victory and being like, we got all of the Black Sea coast of Ukraine. Now they're a landlocked country, a lot of important areas, and then they might just fortify that. So I'd imagine they're really, you get what, that's
any meaningful progress either. The only notable event on the battlefield was a saved any Inhulets bridgehead. On the Zaporizhzhia front, neither side achieved any meaningful progress either. The only notable event on the battlefield was a small advance of the Russian 13th Guards Motor Rifle Brigade against the 68th Jaeger Brigade towards Mikilska. The rest of the front remained stable as both sides tried to deploy more forces to the area in an attempt to potentially break the stalemate. But while the Zaporizhzhia front remained largely stable,
dude, I saw the craziest video. It was on like a Vice of a, I don't want to get demonetized. It was, well, the Vice video didn't, there was a recruitment office and one of the soldiers being recruited from a Russian area, like just the guy.
But while the Zaporizhzhia front remained largely stable, since early August, the situation in the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant started to alarm the international community. On August 3rd, the chief of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, stated that the situation at the plant was completely out of control under the Russian administration, and that every principle of nuclear safety has been violated. According to the Institute for the Study of War, Russian forces based around the NPP have attacked Ukrainian positions in Nikopol and elsewhere in recent weeks.
Question, guys. Another question. This is a good question. I promise. All of my questions are good. So all of these questions about like what would it take for NATO, mainly the U.S. and and NATO, to get involved, not just in like a proxy style involvement, giving aid and weapons and stuff, but the actual, okay, it's not Ukraine against Russia, it's NATO and Ukraine against Russia. Like, what would Russia carelessly or deliberately or something destroy doing something irresponsible or purposely to a nuclear power plant that gets like a Chernobyl or worse? Would that be enough, do you think, for people to get involved? Like, what if it went downwind to other countries? And I'm just wondering, like, what would it take for like this to become a big war? Like, analogy, like, what is it going to take to turn this from the Balkan War to the World War I? Just that, my question.
Putting Ukraine in a difficult position. Either Ukraine returns fire, risking international condemnation and a nuclear incident, which Ukrainian forces are unlikely to do, or Ukrainian forces allow Russian forces to continue firing on Ukrainian positions from an effective safe zone. Both sides blamed each other for the situation at the power plant throughout August. Grossi called Ukraine and Russia to facilitate an inspection visit of the atomic agency to the power plant. On August 5th, Russian opposition media outlet The Insider reported that Russian forces had mined the turbine room of Energy Block 1 of the power plant. Other sources suggest
what?
Russian opposition media outlet
I didn't know they had opposition media outlets in Russia. I seriously didn't.
The Insider reported that Russian forces had mined the turbine room of Energy Block 1 of the power plant. Other sources suggest that Russian soldiers, military vehicles, explosives, and anti-aircraft guns were stationed within the plant. More evidence of Russia storing military equipment in and around the plant emerged on August 21st, as satellite imagery from that date showed that Russian military equipment had been placed within 60 meters of Reactor 5. On August 6th, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky condemned Russia for shelling of the power plant as an act of terror and called on the international community to recognize Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. On August 14th, 42 states called on Russia to remove its forces from the power plant. On August 25th, the Ukrainian nuclear operator Energoatom claimed that the Russian shelling had caused fire at ash pits near the Zaporizhzhia thermal power plant, approximately 5 kilometers from the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. At the end of August, Russia at last agreed to the inspection of the power plant by the IAEA delegation headed by Grossi. Since shelling of the area occurs quite regularly, and all evidence shows that the Russian army is storing its troops, military vehicles, and equipment in the territory of the power plant, the threat of a nuclear disaster is real, and we can just hope that it can be avoided through demilitarization of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant.
I heard.
On August 4th, a prominent global human rights organization, Amnesty International, accused Ukraine of violating the principles of the international humanitarian law by deploying its forces and military equipment in civilian areas and buildings, and firing on Russian positions from there. This caused an outrage in the Ukrainian government, as Zelensky refuted Amnesty's claim, blaming the organization of shifting the responsibility from the aggressor to the victim. Since
This is where I make my comment that I have in my head that people are going to get mad about. It's a genuine question. All right. So I'm not going to not ask it. All right. Not say it. Ukraine is clearly the one being attacked Nobody denies that. But, oh my God, should I just... Just because you're being attacked doesn't mean you can't also do stuff. Whatever. Never mind. I can't talk.
Ukraine's only viable strategy, especially at the beginning of the war, when the forces were particularly unequal, was drawing the Russian forces into cities and bleeding them out in costly urban battles. One could question how Ukraine could have possibly avoided a quick military defeat while accommodating all provisions of the international humanitarian law, which, to put it lightly, Russia has had no intentions of observing since the start of the invasion. On August 6th, several reports about Ukrainian partisan and sabotage activities emerged. The deputy head of the Russian occupation authorities in Novokakhovka, Vitaly, was shot and died soon after. On the same day, an explosion
I gotta shut up.
The deputy head of the Russian occupation authorities in Novokakhovka, Vitaly, was shot and died soon after. On the same day, an explosion was reported at a police station in occupied Berdyansk. On August 9th, a very important milestone was passed by the Ukrainian army in this war. Earlier in the war, many thought that Crimea was off limits. For more than 5 months, no military actions took place in Crimea. Russian officials explicitly warned Ukraine against attacking the Russian-annexed peninsula. In mid-July,
Sevastopol. Was it Crimean War? Or, sorry.
Explicitly warned Ukraine against attacking the Russian-annexed peninsula. In mid-July, former Russian president and now the deputy chairman of the Russian Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, stated that in case of a Ukrainian attack on Crimea, Judgment Day will come very fast and hard. It will be very difficult to hide. Nevertheless, on August 9th, at least 9 Russian aircraft were destroyed after an explosion at the Sabotage military airbase of Russia in Novofedorivka, Crimea, making it the single biggest loss of Russian aircraft since the Second World War. The base is around 220 kilometers away from the Ukrainian positions, which made it impossible to target it by the GM.
Did I hear that right? 9 aircraft being destroyed is the largest amount since World War II? Not
LRS missiles supplied to Ukraine by the US for the HIMARS. Neither Russia nor Ukraine acknowledged that this was caused by a Ukrainian action, but ironic comments from the Ukrainian officials indicated that this was in fact done by the Ukrainian army operating behind Russian lines, while the official Russian side insisted that explosions occurred due to negligence. The comments President Zelensky made,
just like with the sinking of the Russian flagship in the Black Sea. How is it less embarrassing to say, oh, we just weren't paying attention and we're just stupid, or just and it blew up? It's like, no, there was a fire that sunk the ship. That's even more embarrassing than if a Ukrainian weapon, which might have even been helped out by American intelligence to know where the ship is, downed it. I don't get that thought process.
Made on the following day made it clear that it was indeed a Ukrainian operation. He said that this Russian war began with Crimea and must end with Crimea, with its liberation. On the same day, an ammunition depot in Henishensk, Crimea was struck too. Again, it was out of HIMARS' reach, so how exactly an explosion occurred can only be guessed. On August 16th, explosions occurred at a Russian ammunition depot in Jankoy district of Crimea and at an airfield near Avdiivka, Crimea, and an anonymous senior Ukrainian official told the New York Times that it was another operation conducted by Ukrainian special forces behind Russian lines.
Guys, can I just see quick how big is Crimea in square miles? 10,000. Ooh, that's like Massachusetts. Yeah, so slightly smaller than Massachusetts. Okay, that helps me out. Where was I? Okay.
On operation conducted by Ukrainian special forces behind Russian lines. On August 18th, another explosion in Crimea was reported, this time near the Belbek airbase. On August 30th, it was reported that an oil depot was hit in the village of Chevonovhadiska of Crimea. Ukraine's operations in Crimea demonstrated that it has grown in confidence to conduct sabotage operations deep behind enemy lines in the region, which many expected to remain out of reach of the Ukrainian army. Moreover, these operations had caused further damage on Russian supply deep behind enemy lines in the region, which many expected to remain out of reach of the Ukrainian army. Moreover, these operations had caused further damage on Russian supplies in the south of Ukraine in preparation for an expected Ukrainian counteroffensive.
Sorry, does anyone know what the climate on Crimea is like? Just a question.
In the Kherson Oblast. According to the Ukrainian main military intelligence directorate, the Russian command had been relocating its aircraft deeper in the Crimean Peninsula and to Russia in order to safeguard them from Ukrainian sabotage operations. The Russian authorities in occupied Crimea also installed checkpoints in Sevastopol to find Ukrainian saboteurs. On August 12th, Ukraine damaged the last functioning bridge that the Russian army used to supply its troops in Kherson Oblast, near the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant, making it impassable. According to the UK Ministry of Defence, that used to supply its troops in Kherson Oblast, near the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant, making it impassable. According to the UK Ministry of Defence, at that point, Russia could only supply its soldiers by 2 pontoon bridges. This paved the way for the emergence of reports that the Russian command on the western bank of the Dnipro River of the Kherson Oblast relocated to the eastern bank. On the same day, elements of the 1st Army Corps of the separatist DPR gained some ground from Avdiivka towards Zaporizhzhia, pushing back the 46th Airborne Brigade. Between August 12th and 14th, heavy fighting occurred south of Avdiivka, where reportedly...
Okay, question, guys. Question, big question. Huge question.
Same day, of the Kherson Oblast relocated to the eastern bank. On the same day, elements of the 1st Army Corps of the separatist DPR gained some ground from Avdiivka towards Zaporizhzhia, pushing back the 46th separatist DPR.
Why aren't they just essentially now in the Russian army? I mean, why not just call them? Like, why would Russia still refer to them as the separatists, whatever? Like, why wouldn't they just call them they're the Russian Donbass troops? Doesn't that kind of undercut? Like, if I'm Putin, wouldn't you want to, like, okay, I'm taking this territory, I want to make it look like they're all really Russians. Well, then why would you have, like, a separatist movement? I'm no military genius. I can't stress enough, guys, the bottom left mini-map really helps me out, especially because I don't know Ukrainian towns. But yeah, why different?
Gained some ground from Avdiivka towards Zaporizhzhia, pushing back the 46th Airborne Brigade. Between August 12th and 14th, heavy fighting occurred south of Avdiivka, where reportedly the 1st Army Corps of the DPR separatists advanced in Pisky and near Spartak and Mineralna. 2 days later, LPR separatists achieved small gains towards Novomikhalovka and Solodka in the south of Mariinka. It is interesting that a day before this offensive, one of the LPR units shared a video where they stated their displeasure about fighting for the DPR-claimed territories. On August 17th, Russia in the south of Mariinka. It is interesting that a day before this offensive, one of the LPR units shared a video where they stated their displeasure about fighting for the DPR-claimed territories. On August 17th, Russia finally dismissed the commander of its Black Sea Fleet, Igor Osipov, after several setbacks, such as the sinking of the Moskva cruiser and the loss of Zminy Island. He was replaced by Vice Admiral Viktor Sokolov.
That's the island with the crazy footage, man. Yeah, you know what I mean.
On August 18th, in Lviv, Zelensky met with the Turkish President Erdogan and UN Secretary-General Guterres to discuss the situation around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the grain deal, and potential peace talks with Russia. On August 20th, the Ukrainian government reported that Russia and Belarus signed defense...
So I've learned that Turkey and Finland and Sweden don't really like I don't know enough to talk about it. Never mind.
And UN Secretary-General Guterres to discuss the situation around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the grain deal, and potential peace talks with Russia. On August 20th, the Ukrainian government reported that Russia and Belarus signed defense agreements, which stipulated that Russian military aviation equipment would be repaired in Belarus. Between August 21st to 24th, the 136th Guards Motor Rifle Brigade and the Kalmias Brigade of the DPR separatists recaptured Avdiivka, while in the Kherson front, the 20th Guards Motor Rifle Division pushed back the Ukrainian Territorial Defense Brigades to take control of Blahodashne. On August 21st, the Russian propagandist Daya Dugina, the daughter of Kremlin ideologue Alexander Dugin, was killed in a car blast under suspicious circumstances. Ukraine officially denied any involvement, while the exiled former Russian MP, Ilya Ponomarev, claimed that the attack was conducted by the National Republican Army, a Russian partisan group. Nevertheless, the Russian FSB announced fairly quickly that the attack was planned and carried out by the Ukrainian citizen Natalia Vovk, but the only proof they showed was a grainy video of someone resembling Vovk in Russia. On August 22nd,
well, that's all I need to see. That's concrete.
Of someone resembling Vovk in Russia. On August 22nd, a shocking report about forceful transfer of over 1,000 children from Mariupol to different regions of Russia emerged. According to this report, these children were transferred to Russia for adoption by Russian families, in a blatant violation of the UN Genocide Convention. On the same day,
that is fricked up. That is mass. That is literally, I can use that word literally. That is literally mass child abduction. Jesus. I love it when I can use the word literally in its correct sense, because it's overused.
In violation of the UN Genocide Convention. On the same day, the administrative building of the so-called Donetsk People's Republic was struck. Separatist leader Denis Pushilin was not in the building at that moment, but 3 people were killed as a result of this strike. On the following day, Russia conducted a missile attack on a railway station in Chaplina, Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, which killed at least 25 people. Also on August 24th, the Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu stated that at the meeting of defense ministers of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization that Russia was deliberately slow in its pace of advance in order to avoid civilian casualties. Given the Russian negligence,
yeah, I believe you. Yeah, I totally believe you. What? That's completely believable.
For civilian lives in the war in Ukraine so far, the massacre in Bucha and regular destruction of Ukrainian civilian infrastructure, it is very difficult to believe Shoigu. The slow Russian advance
it's not just very difficult. It's
is not deliberate. It is a result of heavy Ukrainian resistance. The slow Russian advance is not deliberate. It is a result of heavy Ukrainian resistance.
What about
other
that
evidence of the so-called
What? Imagine if Ukraine had just like 3 American like fighter pilots. Obviously, then that would start World War III. So you couldn't. But that traffic jam. Just get a few jets. Oh my God! And you don't even need precision bombing. You can use carpet napalm or carpet conventional bombing, and that's miles just gone.
Special military operation not going according to plan was the August 25th decree of Vladimir Putin, ordering the increase of the number of active military personnel for Russia by 137,000. It is unclear how the Russian government was going to...
Yes, I'm on news. Russian people, the liberation of Ukraine is going amazing, very swift. By the way, I need 137,000 extra soldiers.
To achieve this increase without declaring at least a partial mobilization. Such an increase could possibly be achieved through attracting more people to the Russian army as contract servicemen, or incorporation of new volunteer battalions to the Russian army. The report about the recently formed 3rd Army Corps of Russia being sent to the border with Ukraine also informed us about the Kremlin's unhappiness with developments on the battlefield, as the Russian command hoped that deployment of new units might turn the tide. The expectation was that they were going to be deployed to the Zaporizhzhia and Kharkiv fronts, where Russian troops were reported to be relatively undermanned. On August 26th, Ukraine struck the Donbass hotel in the town of Avdiivka of Luhansk Oblast. Ukraine claimed that the hotel was used as a barracks and that the strike had killed 200 Russians.
Wait, what are these yellow striped markers indicating?
Ukraine claimed that the hotel was used as a barracks and that the strike had killed 200 Russian soldiers. Also on that day, an Israeli private intelligence company shared satellite images showing that Russia had allegedly moved its S-300 air defense system from Syria back to Russia. This may have been an indicator that Russia needed more air defense systems in Ukraine, also in an attempt to minimize the damage from Ukrainian precision strikes. In the last few days of the month, battles on several fronts intensified. After weeks of putting intense pressure on the 72nd Mechanized Brigade, the separatist DPR units and Wagner mercenaries pushed back the Ukrainian defenders to the western outskirts of Kodyma, south of Bakhmut. On the Kharkiv front, an unconfirmed report of the capture of the village of Udi by the 200th Separate Motor Rifle Brigade emerged. But the most important events transpired in the Kherson front. After weeks of preparation, the Ukrainian army finally launched its counter-offensive to retake Kherson on August 29th. After destroying all of the main bridges connecting Kherson Oblast with the rest of the Russian-occupied territory, Ukraine started targeting Russian pontoon bridges too, in order to prevent any supplies reaching Russian troops in this area. This was paired with a three-pronged Ukrainian offensive along the M14 highway towards the city of Kherson, from the Avdiivka-Lazova bridgehead and from the area. This was paired with a three-pronged Ukrainian offensive along the M14 highway towards the city of Kherson, from the Avdiivka-Lazova bridgehead and from the Vysokopilya area. Immediately after the start of the offensive, it was reported that the first line of the Russian defenses, manned by the DPR militia, was overwhelmed in several directions. Along the M14 highway, the 28th Mechanized Brigade...
Guys, why do they have to... I always wonder this. Clearly there's something I don't know, but why do they always try to go for big encirclements? Like, why not just do, like, tick, tick? I guess because they have to reach a natural barrier, like a... Am I answering my own question now? Okay. Okay, I think I answered my... Okay, because if they don't... So they want to reach a natural barrier to encircle so that it'll be harder to supply more Russian troops. I think I just answered my own question.
The direct line of the Russian defenses, manned by the DPR militia, was overwhelmed in several directions. Along the M14 highway, the 28th Mechanized Brigade, the 59th Motorized Brigade, along with the Territorial Defense Brigades, pushed back the 20th Guards Motor Rifle Division and elements of the 7th Guards Mountain Air Assault Division to advance on Pravdina, Ternovi Podi, and Posad Pokrovska. It was reported that Pravdina changed hands several times until the end of the month. Zelenihai and Blahadatna remained heavily contested too. Around the Avdiivka-Lazova bridgehead, the Ukrainian Marine units spearheaded the attack to liberate Suky Stavok and Kostromka, while battles around Bryskinska continued at the time of writing of this script. But while Ukraine had limited success on these two axes, several military analysts argued that the main focus of the Ukrainian offensive was from the Vysokopilya area. There, the Ukrainian 60th Motorized Brigade reportedly drew south of Vysokopilya and Olina to envelop Russian Spetsnaz units in the area. The liberation of Arkhangelska village was also reported in this direction. We must note that at the time of writing of the script, the situation on the Kherson front remained extremely fluid. The Russian government and Russian military bloggers unanimously claim that the Ukrainian counteroffensive...
Thank you guys for... When I think of blogger, I understand now. It's not like a teenager in a room. Okay, blogger. It just sounds so...
The script, the situation on the Kherson front remained extremely fluid. The Russian government and Russian military bloggers unanimously claim that the Ukrainian counteroffensive had failed with heavy losses, while the Ukrainian government had been very tight-lipped about its progress or lack thereof. But it is notable that the Ukrainian officials have warned against expecting a lightning-quick offensive. According to them, the officials have warned against expecting a lightning-quick offensive. According to them, the Kherson counteroffensive is going to be a slow and systematic effort of diminishing Russian manpower and firepower in the region, which was going to lead to its eventual liberation. We'll talk about the Kherson counteroffensive in detail in the coming weeks.
I was going to say, that was a fast 30 minutes.
As right now, we're trying to confirm what is transpiring in the region. On the diplomatic front, on the first day of August, the UN and Turkey brokered grain export deal between Ukraine and Russia saw its first results. On that day, the first Ukrainian vessel carrying grain left Odessa and headed to Lebanon. In the first week of August, 7 more ships carrying Ukrainian grain and corn left Ukrainian Black Sea ports to transport this vital product to...
Until learning about this, I never knew the impact that Ukrainian grain exports had on the global market. I didn't know that Ukraine was such a large, grain exporter.
International markets. Also on August 1st, the US announced its 17th aid package to Ukraine, worth $550 million, which included ammunition for M777 howitzers and HIMARS. Along with that, German Mars 2 multiple rocket launcher systems and 4 additional HIMARS arrived in Ukraine. But even though Western arms support to Ukraine has been regular, President Zelensky's comments on August 2nd made it clear that Ukraine needed more. Zelensky claimed that despite the support, Ukraine had still not reached parity in heavy guns and firepower with Russia. This is very much felt in combat, especially in Donbass. It's just hell there. Words cannot describe it.
Why don't we just bring like a few dozen Ukrainian pilots over to the US or Germany and get them trained, because this still isn't direct confrontation with Russia. Get them trained in the F-32 Rap, whatever the highest tech American plane is, and get them trained so that they can get air superiority, because I'm pretty sure Russia kind of controls that. If we're willing to give them all this money for this other stuff, then why is a jet off limits?
August, Ukraine's allies announced additional military aid to Ukraine. On August 8th, 19th and 24th, the United States announced its 18th, 19th and 20th military aid packages to Ukraine, which included more HIMARS, M777, NASAMS and HARM rockets and shells, Javelins, Scan-Eagle surveillance drones, Claymore mines, 6 NASAMS air defense systems, more artillery systems and vehicles. The 20th military aid package, dedicated to the anniversary of Ukrainian independence, is particularly notable for being worth almost $3 billion. On August 10th, British Defence Secretary Ben Wallace pledged 2 more M270 MLRS. On August 11th, the Northern European allies of Ukraine raised 1.5 billion euros for military aid to Ukraine. On August 13th, Swedish Defence Minister Peter Hultqvist stated Sweden's readiness to directly produce weapons for Ukraine. On August 24th, still British Prime Minister Boris Johnson pledged an additional £54 million of military aid to Ukraine. Ukraine's Western allies continued to provide military supplies to Ukraine throughout August, and there is no indication that this is going to stop. And it should be noted that the Ukrainian military aid through the Ukrainian Lend-Lease Act had not started yet in August, as the Ukrainian government officials predicted that Lend-Lease supplies will start arriving in the fall of 2022.
Hey, Poltava. Charles XII, sorry.
Predicted that Lend-Lease supplies will start arriving in the fall of 2022. Western military support has allowed Ukraine to inflict significant damage on Russian military infrastructure in Ukraine, as Ukraine continued targeting Russian ammunition and oil depots. Explosions were reported at the oil depot in McJibbin on August 3rd, near Oleshki on August 5th, at the Antonivsky Bridge on August 8th, at Chonha on August 10th, at Vesela on August 11th, at the Russian base in Tokmak and ammunition depot in Rodikovka on August 15th, at an ammunition depot in Ambrosivka on August 18th, at ammunition depots in Donetsk and Novokharkovka on August 22nd, at the Antonivsky Bridge again on August 25th, and across Kherson Oblast on August 27th. A whopping 48 HIMARS and M270 strikes were conducted by Ukraine from August 29th to 31st. This list is by no means exhaustive. Ukraine continued using HIMARS and other MLRS provided by the West successfully to diminish the Russian firepower and destroy by no means exhaustive. Ukraine continued using HIMARS and other MLRS provided by the West successfully to diminish the Russian firepower and destroy key supply lines. For instance, according to the Russian-appointed Kherson Occupation Administration official Kirill Stremisov, the Antonivsky Bridge, which is a key line of supply for Russian troops stationed in Kherson Oblast, had been closed to traffic since July 26th to 27th. However, Ukraine was not the only country that got foreign military supplies in this war. Several reports of Iranian drones being purchased by Russia emerged throughout August. On August 2nd, unconfirmed reports claiming that Iran had sent the first batch of its drones to Russia for testing in exchange for Russian Su-35s emerged. 3 days later, the advisor to the Ukrainian presidential administration, Alexei Arestovich, claimed that Iran had supplied 46 drones to Russia. He went even further to state that Russia had already started using these drones in Ukraine. According to Arestovich, this included Shahed 129 strike drones. On August 29th, The Washington Post cited unnamed security officials from the United States and its allies who suggested that on August 19th, Iran delivered at least 2 types of drones to Russia, most probably Shahed 129 and Shahed 191 strike drones, along with Mahajer-6 strike and surveillance drones. The report also noted that the Russians were not satisfied with these drones. Nevertheless, this was the first claimed foreign weapon supply to Russia since the start of the invasion. The war in Ukraine has been raging for over 6 months. Neither side managed to break the stalemate throughout August.
I'm laughing at Iran, all right, and Russia.
Russia continued to focus on grinding through the Ukrainian defenses amid heavy losses in Donbass, while Ukraine finally started its long-awaited counter-offensive in Kherson. The status quo in the Kharkiv and Zaporizhzhia fronts remained largely unchanged. According to the Institute for the Study of War, since restarting its offensive operations on July 16th, Russia had managed to capture only about 450 square kilometers, or 0.08% of Ukrainian territory, and in total controls about 19.48% of Ukraine. Western military aid, particularly multiple rocket launcher systems, has largely halted the Russian advance. Russian intentions to hold referendums in occupied regions in order to ultimately annex them look far-fetched at the moment too. The counter-offensive.
You just imagine like the polls being just a piece of paper saying, become part of Russia, become part of Russia.
Offensive in Kherson and continued partisan activities in the occupied areas make realization of these plans in September unlikely.
I was an idiot and trying to make a joke and didn't listen.
2. Regions, in order to ultimately annex them, look far-fetched at the moment too. The counter-offensive in Kherson and continued partisan activities in the occupied areas make realization of these plans in September unlikely. Both sides continued suffering heavy losses. The most recent estimate of manpower losses of Russia was made by the Pentagon on August 8th, according to which Russia has suffered 70 to 80,000 killed and wounded. The number of Ukrainian losses is
Listen, I asked this question in the last video, and I got a bunch of answers. Like, yeah, they satellite or whatever. How is this calculated? I'm not trying to question it. I'm genuinely interested.
Clear. On August 22nd, the Ukrainian commander-in-chief, Valery Zaluzhny, said that about 9,000 Ukrainian soldiers had died since the start of the war. But almost 3 months before that, on June 3rd, the presidential advisor, Alexei Arestovich, suggested a higher number of casualties at around 10,000. According to the Oryx military blog, these are visually confirmed losses of Russian equipment by September 2nd. 994 tanks, 2,055 vehicles, 113 command posts and communication stations, 16 heavy mortars, 267 artillery pieces and vehicles, 90 multiple rocket launchers, 52 aircraft, 49 helicopters, and 121 drones. On the Ukrainian side, the visually confirmed equipment losses are the following: 249 tanks, 609 vehicles, 7 command posts and communication stations, 115 artillery pieces and vehicles, 22 multiple rocket launchers, 41 aircraft, 13 helicopters, and 33 drones. Unfortunately,
This is what it seems like. It seems like Russia was extremely confident. It went into Ukraine just throwing everything at it, right? A bunch of, you can tell by the amount of losses of equipment and people. And Ukraine, along with a ton of help from outside, from other countries supplying with weapons, along with Ukraine's brave and, intelligent defense of the country, has just put up such more of a resistance than Russia thought. And I don't know how this war is gonna.
Fortunately, more videos on this conflict are on the way, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see them. Please consider liking, commenting, and sharing. It helps immensely.
Sacrifice to the gods. Great video as always. Always love the content. The content. Keep up the awesome work. Heart smiley face. Really cool video, guys. I know there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 left that are out, and maybe there are more to come out after that. I'll continue them. All right, guys. Interesting. I had a few questions. Hope you guys learned something or can answer some of my questions I had in the comments, or just your thoughts. And I hope you guys are all doing well. I love y'all. If you're not doing well, chin up. You'll be good soon. Emotions are fickle, my friend. Or maybe not. I don't know. See you guys next time. Bye.